the New York Giants make a few more signings. And these are all basically depth moves, but three players that have a chance to make the roster. They signed Jamison Crowder, who is another slot receiver. So it's interesting how the Giants continue, not just receivers, but specifically more diminutive, smaller receivers that they're bringing in. And Jamison Crowder coming off of an injured season with the Buffalo Bills, but, the Giants are very familiar with him from his days with the Washington, then Redskins. His first 4 years of his career, the next three with the New York Jets. And last year with the Bills was injured and only played in a few games. They also signed cornerback Amani Oruwariye, who in his last 4 years was with the Detroit Lions. There's a Saquon Barkley connection there, and I should mention with Crowder that he went to Duke. So now that's, I think like 3 to 4 players now that are, on Duke. And there was no overlap with Daniel Jones, but it's worth mentioning. But with Oruwariye, he was definitely teammates with Saquon Barkley at Penn State. 2019 draft pick, 5th round from the Lions. And, what stands out when you look at the stats is 6 interceptions in 2021. And he was a starter in 2020 and 2021. 2022 seems like it was a little bit more coming off the bench. Did start 5 games. Look, I think that'll be in the conversation, but I think anything's possible. The Giants, there is lacking of depth at the cornerback position when I look at the Giants, and so this is someone that could end up playing a big role. Or maybe not. I kind of spoke about this with Leonard Johnson, different situation, but, you could find yourself off the roster completely. Or maybe, he could definitely make that final 53. And then the Giants also signed tight end Tommy Sweeney, who will operate likely as the third tight end if he is to make the roster. And with this, obviously there's the connection with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Sweeney was basically the backup to Dawson Knox, was more involved in previous years in 2021 when Knox was hurt. Sweeney, was elevated into a starting role. Played a lot of, he's a blocking tight end. Total blocking tight end. And is a local product. He's from New Jersey, went to Boston College. So Sweeney, it makes sense as a fit, and I could definitely see him being that tight end behind Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger. He's different than Lawrence Cager, right? Lawrence Cager is a converted receiver. Sweeney more of a blocking tight end. I could definitely see Sweeney making the team. I could see all 3 of these players making the team, but let's talk about them in a little bit more depth. Jamison Crowder, again, it's interesting because you do have Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard. And there's definitely a few others. Clearly Richie James, you wouldn't think Richie James is going to return, but there's other wide receivers in the mix that the Giants have brought in recently that would suggest that there's going to be a lot of competition at, in the wide receiver spot. And with Crowder, look, this is someone that, has had some pretty big seasons, but just really a target hog. 103 targets in 2017, 99 in 2016, 122 with the Jets in his first year in 2019. And someone that has dealt with some, there's been some injury issues definitely recently. His Washington days was relatively healthy in his first 3 years. In his first year with the Jets, he was. But the last few seasons, he's definitely, it's been a bit of an issue. He's a little bit older now. He was... It's kind of like Sterling. Shepard was a 2016 draft pick. Crowder 2015. They're around the same age, and I would expect that Jamison Crowder, look, with a good camp, with the resume that he's put together before, is someone that's interesting. Again, I was impressed by him when he was with Washington, and he had some pretty good years with the Jets as well, on some down Jet teams. Really, I guess his whole career he's been on teams that haven't been so great until he was on Buffalo, but unfortunately injured and really didn't make much of an impact. So with Crowder, it's a minimum deal. It's good competition. There's a lot of depth there. Not a whole lot of top number 1 wide receiver types, but certainly a lot of more receivers to choose from. And so Crowder will be in that mix. As far as Oruwariye, again, 6'2", from Penn State, still relatively young, just turned 27. It seems like he's kind of trending a little bit downward after, a 2021 year. Look, even if the coverage, I don't think he graded out well as a coverage corner, which obviously isn't what you're looking for. But again, 6 interceptions, that's a talent right there. That's a lot. That's not luck. To get 6 interceptions in one season, that jumps out to me. So clearly there's a level of, interception ability. And we'll see what he brings to the table. Curious to see how he performs. Maybe when we get a look at him in preseason. But none of these moves today change the outlook on the draft. Nothing here is going to change anything. Like, for example, the Bobby McCain signing, to me, there's more significance there. I think, you can pencil him in right now, in all likelihood, as a starting safety. Oruwariye, it's certainly more uncertain. And I don't know the contract details here, but I'm going to assume also probably a 1 year, I believe it is a 1 year deal, and probably not a whole lot of money. And then again, Sweeney. This is a predictable one only because, again, we know that he's from the Schoen Dayball regime, and so he'll fit in well in that way, and clearly they trust him. He adds that blocking element, which certainly Darren Waller is not, and Bellinger's kind of a hybrid, where Bellinger's, a little bit of a receiving game, but he can also block. But Sweeney, I think that with a good camp, he'll make it. But I also like Lawrence Cager. I hope there's a world in which somehow they can all make it through, but that might not be possible. This is a 7th round pick who has stuck around, who's stuck with the Bills for 4 seasons in his career, 18 catches, 165 yards, and 1 touchdown. In 4 seasons, although he was out in 2020, I'm going to assume that was due to injury, as there's no statistics for the 2020 season. I believe that it looks like that was probably the case. So, I believe that these are moves that are definitely worth mentioning. And ones that, obviously in Crowder's case, was a definite name that people would recognize. Not so much with the other two, but, I think Shane's doing a good job of trying to bring in depth. And I believe that this roster on paper should be better than the 2022 version. Will that mean that their record will be better this coming season? Not necessarily. May not mean that, but I do think that the team that Joe Schoen has envisioned is really coming more to fruition than what he was given last year. So we'll see what else the Giants do from here. Again, I'm always kind of thinking, all right, like this will be it, but they keep on adding on, and it's good to see with the draft about a month plus away. So we'll see what happens. But again, Giants bring in Jamison Crowder, Oruwariye, and Sweeney into the fold.